It all started on a busy afternoon at the Atlanta International Airport. The security lines were long, the terminals crowded, and tensions running a little high, as they usually do in airports. Among the crowd was a well-dressed black woman, calm and collected, wheeling her suitcase toward the check-in counter. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, until a police officer posted nearby decided to single her out. Without any clear reason, he stopped her, asked unnecessary questions, and spoke to her in a way that turned more heads than hers. She stayed composed, even as his tone shifted from professional to downright condescending. Passengers nearby paused, watching the scene unfold. Some took out their phones, unsure of what would happen next. The woman, however, didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She simply gave the officer one warning. "You might want to be careful who you're talking to." He laughed it off, brushed it aside like she was bluffing. But then she calmly reached into her purse and made a quick call. No yelling, no drama, just a quiet message. "Baby, there's a situation at gate 12. I think you might want to come down here." What the officer didn't know was that her husband wasn't just some regular traveler. He was the owner of the very airline she was flying on, one of the most respected names in the aviation industry. Within minutes, everything was about to change. The cop's smug confidence would soon melt away, and the airport crowd would witness a moment they wouldn't forget. But what exactly happened when the husband showed up? And how did the officer react when the truth hit him? Stick around, because what comes next is something no one saw coming. As the woman ended the call, the officer gave a smirk, arms folded, clearly not taking her seriously. "Nice try," he muttered under his breath, still blocking her path like he had something to prove. A few more travelers slowed down, watching, unsure if this was going to turn into another viral airport incident, but she didn't seem shaken. Her confidence wasn't loud, but it was strong. That quiet strength only made people more curious. Who was she really? She stood there, waiting calmly, while the officer kept questioning her, asking where she was going, why she was there alone, even though she had already shown her boarding pass and ID. His tone wasn't just aggressive, it felt personal. And yet, she refused to stoop to his level. She didn't argue, didn't shout, just stood tall, responding clearly, respectfully, and with just enough edge to remind him she wasn't someone to be pushed around. Then, something started to shift. People noticed a few airport staff members whispering nearby. A man in a suit walked briskly through the terminal with two other employees trailing behind him. The officer noticed too, but tried not to show it. The woman, however, turned slightly, offering the faintest smile. You see, her husband wasn't just the owner of the airline. He was known for being hands-on and protective of both his team and his family. The kind of man who didn't wait for problems to go viral before handling them. As he approached gate 12, heads began turning. Phones came up. Whispers turned into murmurs. The officer's posture shifted. You could feel it in the air. Something was about to drop. But no one yet knew just how deep this moment would go, or how many people would be watching when the tables turned. The man in the suit reached the scene with calm authority. He didn't come charging in. He didn't raise his voice. But the energy around him changed instantly. Airport staff stepped back, and the officer suddenly seemed unsure, still trying to piece together who this man was. The woman turned to him and said softly, "Meet my husband." The officer blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Sir, this doesn't concern you," he said quickly, trying to hold on to whatever control he thought he had. But the husband didn't even acknowledge the officer's words at first. Instead, he looked at his wife, made sure she was okay, and then turned his gaze toward the man in uniform, sharp, calm, and piercing. Behind them, a few airline crew members started quietly talking among themselves. Some recognized the man immediately. One whispered to a co-worker, "That's Elijah Matthews. He owns the airline." Another chimed in, "This isn't gonna end well for that cop." Still, the officer kept trying to cover his tracks, repeating that he was just doing his job. But his voice didn't carry the same weight anymore. Elijah listened without interrupting, but his face said enough. He'd heard this kind of excuse before. As tension hung in the air, passengers nearby kept recording. It wasn't just about one officer and one woman anymore. This moment had layers: race, power, respect, accountability. And for some people watching, it struck a nerve, because they'd lived through something like it themselves. Meanwhile, one of the senior airport managers got word of what was happening and began rushing down from the upper level. Even the airline's regional director was on a call, asking, "How did we let it get this far?" No one knew yet how this was going to end, but it was clear something bigger had just begun. By now, the area around Gate 12 felt like the center of the entire airport. More passengers had gathered, some standing still with wide eyes, others whispering among themselves. Phones were still up, recording every second, and the officer's discomfort was starting to show. He shifted his stance, his voice a little shaken now, trying to explain that the woman had seemed suspicious. But his words didn't land the way they used to. Not with her calm presence. Not with Elijah standing inches away, listening to every word. Elijah didn't speak right away. Instead, he pulled out his ID, one that clearly showed his name next to the airline's logo. The officer glanced at it, then quickly looked away. There was no denying it now. He'd gone too far, and not with just anyone. This woman wasn't just a passenger. She was the wife of the man who helped build this airline from the ground up. Airport security supervisors started arriving, pushing gently through the crowd. One of them, a tall woman with a headset and a clipboard, recognized Elijah instantly. Her expression changed from confusion to concern as she approached. "Sir, we're handling this," she said, trying to de-escalate. But the look on Elijah's face said it wasn't going to be brushed aside so easily. Meanwhile, the officer's radio crackled with static and a brief message. "Supervisor en route. Situation at Gate 12 flagged." Even the airport's internal system was now involved. The crowd could feel something was coming, something big. The officer kept glancing at the growing number of staff surrounding him. Elijah finally spoke, voice steady but sharp. "So tell me again, what exactly did my wife do that made her suspicious to you?" Silence fell. All eyes were locked on the officer. This wasn't just about one mistake anymore. It had become a defining moment. The silence after Elijah's question felt heavy. The officer looked around, hoping for backup, for someone to step in and take the heat off him. But no one moved. Not the supervisors, not the staff, and certainly not Elijah. The woman stood calmly by her husband's side, arms crossed, watching the man who had tried to belittle her now struggle to find his words. Then, just when it seemed like the moment couldn't get more intense, a second voice cut through the tension, clear, confident, and unexpected. "That's not the first time he's done this." Everyone turned toward a young flight attendant, standing just a few steps away. She looked nervous but determined. "He stopped my uncle last month. Same kind of thing. Said he looked out of place in first class." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A few more employees exchanged glances, then one more quietly spoke up. "He pulled a passenger aside last week too. We thought it was strange, but didn't want to get involved." Now the story was shifting. It wasn't just about one incident, it was a pattern. A bigger issue. And Elijah knew it. His expression changed. Not louder, not angrier, but more focused. What started as a personal moment had suddenly become something much larger. People weren't just watching out of curiosity anymore. They were seeing something that had been hidden in plain sight, now brought to light by a single confrontation. The officer's badge number was quietly being noted. Supervisors exchanged whispers, and a call was made to airport administration. Elijah remained calm, but his voice carried weight. "Looks like this is bigger than just today, and it's time we deal with it the right way." The tension was electric. This wasn't just about justice for his wife. It was turning into something that could shake the entire system. Just as the whispers turned into serious conversation among airport officials, a voice came through the loudspeaker, one that caught everyone off guard. "Will Mr. Elijah Matthews please report to the operations office immediately?" It was unusual. Elijah gave his wife a reassuring nod and calmly followed two supervisors who had just arrived. Something had shifted behind the scenes. The officer, now pale and silent, was told to stay where he was. Meanwhile, the young flight attendant who spoke up was quietly pulled aside by another supervisor and thanked for her courage. The crowd, still hovering, was buzzing with questions. Everyone wanted to know what was happening next. Inside the operations office, Elijah was greeted by the airport's general manager and a representative from TSA. They had reviewed the footage, spoken with witnesses, and pulled up the officer's prior complaints. Turns out, the young flight attendant was right. There had been multiple reports, quietly filed, quietly ignored. "I didn't come here to make a scene," Elijah said, voice steady. "But I won't ignore this either." That's when the twist came. The general manager pulled out a folder. "We've actually been reviewing our security contracts," she said, "and your airline has a say in which officers are assigned to your terminals." Elijah paused, then slowly nodded. Within the hour, the officer was relieved of duty at that terminal. He wasn't arrested, but he was removed, pending full investigation. His authority, his posture, his control, all gone. But the final twist? Elijah didn't stop there. Later that evening, he released a public statement, not to shame, but to inspire change. He announced a new passenger rights initiative with mandatory bias training for all airport staff working with his airline. The same woman who was singled out at Gate 12 became the face of that campaign. What began as an insult ended as a movement. In the days that followed, the story of what happened at Gate 12 spread across social media and news outlets. But what made it stand out wasn't just the confrontation, it was the way it was handled. No shouting, no chaos, just quiet strength, accountability, and a powerful reminder of how much dignity matters. People praised the woman for her grace under pressure, and many shared how they'd faced similar treatment in airports, workplaces, or even just going about their day. Elijah's new passenger rights initiative quickly gained traction. Other airlines began paying attention. Even the airport administration released a statement saying they would review their own policies and expand training for all staff, including law enforcement. What started as one uncomfortable moment turned into a conversation that reached far beyond one terminal. The young flight attendant who had spoken up received a personal thank you letter and was later promoted within the airline. Her courage, though quiet, had helped spark a change that would impact thousands of travelers moving forward. As for the officer, the investigation continued, and though the airport kept the details private, one thing was clear: his behavior wouldn't be brushed under the rug again. Elijah and his wife continued with their travel plans the very next day. No special treatment, no attention, just two people, walking side by side, knowing that their moment of calm resistance had made a difference. Before boarding, someone in line tapped the woman on the shoulder and simply said, "Thank you." This wasn't just a story about a cop and a passenger. It was a reminder that respect, courage, and the truth can shift the balance. And sometimes, all it takes is one moment, one person standing their ground, to change everything.